So we're beginning to talk about gratitude and being grateful. And I want to begin this evening by first asking a question. And it's simply this: half empty or half full? You see, for me, this is more than some sort of an academic question or some kind of a childhood riddle that really has no solution. For me, this is a fundamental question about how we see things go an awful long way in terms of not just how we see things, but how we see and embrace and experience every aspect and every moment of our lives. Half empty or half full? For the last several months, actually for about the last 6 months, there's been a group that has been using space. We gave them the space freely. It was a group from Freedom for All Massachusetts. They were using space in the church that I pastor in Worcester. They used the conference room and the meeting halls as their base of operation to be able to go out and knock on doors and tell their stories to people in the north part of Worcester and the surrounding communities. And so, as was my habit, every so often when I was in the building and they were there, I'd just stop in to check in and see how things were going. And so just a few days before the election, I stopped in one weekend. I just wanted to check in and see how things were. And one of the organizers just said with just such enthusiasm, you know, we are just so incredibly grateful. We are so grateful to your community for giving us the space. And then she went on and she said, you know, and it's just amazing because there have been people from your congregation who have stopped by and given us cookies. There's this prayer shawl ministry. There are some women who make these prayer shawls, and when somebody's in the hospital or something, they give them these prayer shawls. And there was actually one of the ladies from this group who went to their room one Sunday after worship and just wanted to check in on them and felt so bad for the way that people were being treated within society and some of the commercials and the negative words that they were hearing that she actually gave them these prayer shawls. Each person who was in the room at that moment got a prayer shawl and was given this prayer shawl. And the woman, she said, this lady came up and gave us these prayer shawls and said, here, this is to remind you that God's love is always embracing and wrapping around you. So no matter how bad it gets and no matter how that vote turns out, I just want you to know that. I said, you know, giving space to your group at this time, it's the least that we could do. In this time which is filled with so much hurt and so much anger and so much fragmentation and fear, this is one way that maybe we could actually make space to try to turn that tide. And as I turned to go out of the room, there's another young lady who's in the room, and she was one of the door knockers or people making phone calls. And she said, you know, she said, Pastor, she said, my father is a minister too. And he says it's exactly that. This is all about a choice. It is the choice between faith or fear. What's it going to be? And I said, you know, I said, in some ways that's true. I said, but here's the problem. You know, the challenge is that for too long and for too many, our faith has been filled with fear as well. Half empty or half full? You see, the whole idea about gratitude is more than a feeling, it's more than an attitude, and it's certainly more than the platitude that we hear so much about. For me, gratitude is a response. It is a response to somehow surprisingly experiencing God's grace, God's love, the light of some compassion falling upon us, lighting the way when we didn't think that there was any way, and showing us that it's not a choice between half empty or half full. It's about living our life wholly and fully for who God has created us to be in ways that it is overflowing with gratitude always. And so, there they are, two women, somewhere on their journey. Half empty, half full. One looks down, the other looks up. One says, my God is punishing me. My life is so horrible, I'm changing my name to Bitter. The other says, not true. Your God is like the God of love. I am with you. Your God will be my God, and our God will see us through. For me, this is the whole point, the whole power of gratitude. It is for us to see and experience life differently, for us to see beyond all of our challenges. Naomi is there on that journey. Remember, she lives in a time where women were pretty low on the totem pole and had very, very little status. And she is there because years before, she and her family, they left Judah. They headed out into this foreign land because they were facing famine and economic challenges. And so they go, and the kids grow up, they take wives. Naomi's husband dies. So too do her sons. And so Orpah and Ruth, they are Naomi's daughters-in-laws. They too have journeyed with fear and grief and loneliness. They too are widows. And so the three of them journey onward to head back. And Naomi does what we so often do. When life builds up and we're filled with fear and uncertainty, we sometimes start to push the people who are closest away. Go away, she says. Go on. I can't give you anything that you want. You'll be better off on your own. Orpah receives the invitation, but not Ruth. Ruth, for whatever reason, Ruth sees and experiences life differently, sees beyond the hurt, beyond the bitterness, beyond the pain, and sees Naomi through. Many years ago, before I became a pastor, I used to be a business consultant. And there was a time when our group of about 20 people, we were gathered up from around the world. We were required to go to this mandatory 3-day seminar somewhere out in the desert of California. And so we all arrive and we catch up. And the morning we go to the appointed conference room and we're heading in. And we're all chit-chatting away. And we walk through the door. And all of a sudden, we stop dead because in that room, there is nothing. No tables, no chairs, no nothing. Outside of us, the only thing in that room is this piece of 6x4 piece of green cloth, which is suspended 25 feet away at the other side of the conference room. We have no idea what's expected of us or what we should say. We stop dead in our tracks. We start to speculate and look at one another. But before we can figure it out, this fellow, bouncy, full of joy, just comes wandering in. He's our facilitator, we find out later on. And he stands about, 15, 20 feet away from that green piece of cloth. He puts this mark on the carpet, sets down this little golf ball, and he swings a little putter that he has carried on the way. And sure enough, that little golf ball covered in all different kinds of Velcro, it arcs up just so, and it lands dead center in the 3 concentric circles that have been painted on this big green piece of fabric there on the other side of the room. He looks up. We're all standing there with our mouths wide open in total awe. He says, "Okay, who's next?" Eventually, each one of us must take our turn at trying to hit that little ball onto that green piece of Velcro. But by the time that we're done, only 3 have managed to get the ball even on the far corners of the periphery of that green piece of fabric. So filled with worry and nervousness about what others might think or what others might say, I know that when it came my time to swing that little ball, I put the ball down and I swing the club, and I even close my eyes and I wince just before I hit it, not knowing where it will go, and it rises up and over that piece of fabric, and we can all hear it like ricocheting off the walls and the doors and the windows in behind it 3, 4, 5 different times. For the next 2.5 days, what this facilitator helps us to understand is that what we focus on matters. Half empty, half full. You focus on all the things that you don't want life to be. You focus on your fears. You focus on your worries. You focus on all of the mistakes and missteps. And sure enough, that's where all of your energy is going to go. You want to live the life that God called you to live, you need to focus on being that best person that God created you to be. You want to focus on who God is calling you and to find the hidden blessings every place along that journey. Then you need to focus on how do I experience and witness the light in my life every step of the way. We know that God sent Christ into the world not to condemn it, but in order to heal it, to bring healing and reconciliation, not to further division and fragmentation. We know that God is the God of love who commits to be with each and every one of us every step of the way. It is fear that blocks us from actually being able to live and celebrate life in gratitude. It is worry about what others think or what I'm supposed to say or how I'm supposed to present or what I'm supposed to do today that prevents us from living the way God has made us to be. Half empty or half full. For me, the power of this story is there in that moment when Ruth, who's the outsider, she turns to Naomi and she commits to be with her, come what may, to be with her on that journey. That your God will be my God, and has the confidence that our God will see us through in our lives, in this world in which we are living. When challenges mount, when things don't quite go our way, we have a choice. And that choice is simple. Do we see life as half this or half that? Or do we receive the gift of each new day with openness and gratitude and love overflowing? God is that kind of God who is with you every step of the way. I have to wonder what this community, our city, this nation, the world would be like if each one of us, each day, took small steps in order to start to nurture and foster and celebrate gratitude. Maybe write a journal or keep a list of the things that we're grateful for. Maybe the first thing each morning before we even put our feet on the floor is to rise up and say, thank you, God, for one more day. And each night before we close our eyes and go to bed, to find one thing, one surprising grace we experienced, one person who touched us somehow this day to give thanks for. Just imagine how those little acts of grace and gratitude would open up our hearts and open up our lives and create, I believe, a wave of love overflowing that would change all of the division, the fragmentation, the hurt that we experience in this world. This is the power of gratitude. It is the power to change everything. And you, no matter who you are or where you are in your life journey, you have that power deep within you. May God continue to bless you and guide you and bless us along the way. Amen.